name is Emma, and I'm with the Hawai'i Conservation Alliance. And as an organization, we're slightly unusual, but we are pretty much just what our name says. We are a partnership of 25 different conservation and natural resource stewardship agencies and non-government organizations. So everyone from the Forest Service, national parks, NOAA, to Conservation International, Nature Conservancy, and this is a picture of a bunch of people, and I know it's kind of funny because there's some Christmas stuff in the background there, but I wanted to open with this just because a lot of the work we do is about building connections and building partnerships between the people that do the work of conservation. So even though we as our own organization are really quite tiny, our members represent a huge amount of work, knowledge, and amazing effort that goes on throughout the Hawaiian archipelago. So as I mentioned, we have 25 different member organizations. At the same time, we have a great deal more partners that we work with. And as I talk to you about some of the projects this evening, I'll highlight some of those other folks as well. And so this up here is our steering committee. The Alliance actually started off as a Secretariat for Conservation Biology back in 1988. So we are celebrating our 30th year this year. And some of the folks in that picture have been doing this for 30 years. So I think one of the things that makes me feel very fortunate and humble to work for this organization is recognizing that for 3 decades now, these people have contributed their time. They've worked within their organizations to raise money for collaboration in conservation. And I think it's something that I took for granted a little bit when I started, but the more I talk to people, I realized that once upon a time, agencies didn't speak to each other, and the government agencies and the NGOs didn't necessarily collaborate or work together. And the Alliance was formed basically to address that, to get people sharing information, sharing experience, sharing knowledge, and in some cases even working together in the same place and on the same projects. And it's a pretty special thing, and it has a kind of trendy term now of collective impact, and that, there's a lot of literature about it, but people here in Hawaii have been doing it now for 30 years. So that's a pretty cool thing, and something that I feel really fortunate to be a part of. Just to quickly cover, our member agencies work both terrestrially and in marine and freshwater environments. So we cover the scope of our member responsibilities covers pretty much the entire Hawaiian archipelago, all the way up to Kure Atoll, from Hilo, where the volcano and national parks is currently a big deal. So here is our vision. The Hawai'i Conservation Alliance envisions thriving, abundant lands and seas with their native ecosystems actively cared for by generations of stewards, steered by excellent science and Hawaiian values and practice. And one of the things that's really important for our group is that we recognize that people are a part of our ecosystem, and protected areas are a vital, critical tool in conservation, but there's a lot of other really important tools that involve working with our communities, working within the areas where people live every day, because we can't just call those a loss and walk away. We want to restore from ridge to reef. And our mission statement is to provide unified leadership, advocacy, and collaborative action to conserve and restore native ecosystems and the unique biodiversity of our islands. As I'm sure you folks have heard many times over, we are the extinction capital of the world. We have incredibly high endemism here in Hawaii, both in the sea and on the land, which unfortunately makes our ecosystems particularly vulnerable and susceptible to threats. And so this is something that we want to reverse that trend. We want to see a shift of healthier ecosystems, of more abundant native species. And we recognize that people play a role in that. People can have a positive influence in that. And that we need to look at both the species and the ecosystem. So from a landscape, sometimes you work on a landscape scale, and sometimes you need to work in a small area. And all of those are vital tools in the toolbox. These are our 4 goals. I'm not going to read through them because they're a little bit jargony and wonky, but basically the 4 areas we work in are capacity and leadership. And so that's building capacity and leadership within the broader conservation community of Hawaii to reach our conservation, restoration, and protection goals. Our second area that we work in is integration of Hawaiian knowledge, values, and practice, recognizing that we are in Hawaii and that the Hawaiian people for 1,000 years lived, observed, studied, and learned this place. And there's a great deal of knowledge that's captured in cultural values and practice, and that with that, as well as the best available scientific technology, we actually do have a chance of being successful in our ecological goals and being successful in a way that's compatible with the well-being and sustainability of our communities as well as our ecosystems. Also, of course, we're a conservation organization, so we want to see healthy, productive, vibrant native ecosystems. And it's important to our group that not only are we protecting those areas and conserving those areas that still do have functional systems, but also restoring areas that have been impacted. So again, just because something happened in an area where it was damaged, it doesn't mean it's a total loss and we walk away and we give up. And I think Hanauma is a great example of, there was a time where things were looking pretty dire, and it took a great deal of effort and collaboration and willpower of the community and the agencies involved to help turn that around. And that's not to say that there aren't still challenges. I think there always are and there always will be. But that's something that we want to work towards and support the community of conservationists in achieving. And finally, of course, we want to address existing and emerging threats to native species. So climate change and invasive species are huge, huge drivers of change in the islands, and typically negative change. And so we've worked really hard. Over many years, our members have been very active in increasing awareness about biosecurity and the importance of biosecurity in preventing and limiting the spread of invasive species. Also, of course, in addressing those infestations of invasive species that we do have to try and reverse some of that trend. And then, of course, climate change. It's a really tough one because it's a lot of unknowns. A lot of unpredictable changes, but we know change is coming. Some we can kind of anticipate. So for example, we know that as temperatures increase, the zones that mosquitoes inhabit grow, and the natural refugia of the high mountains are then shrinking, threatening our native bird populations, as well as a lot of our native plant species. But in some cases, there's just huge variability. There might be more rain, there might be less rain. We don't necessarily know yet in the next 10 years or 50 years. And so one of the things that the Alliance has identified is that all conservation organizations would benefit from integrating whatever available climate change data is out there, so that in our planning, we are planning for that future scenario and doing whatever we can with the resources that we have to us. So these are kind of the four broad areas in which we work. But I really wanted today highlight 4 of the projects for you folks to kind of bring it down to what we really do and some kind of tangible things, as well as some things that hopefully will be of some interest to some of you. So one of the things that we are most well known for is our Hawai'i Conservation Conference. This year we will celebrate the 25th annual conference, and it's kind of semi-annual because there are a few years that we did not host a conference. For example, in 2016 when the World Conservation Congress came, that was a massive international event, so we didn't feel the need to duplicate there. But every year we host this conference. It's grown significantly over the years, and the last 4 or 5 conferences have had attendance exceeding 1,000 people. It's a professional conference. We have peer review of all of the abstracts that are submitted. And the original intention of the conference was a real venue for the managers and the researchers to work, to get to know each other, to share information, and then ultimately, hopefully, to work together. And so it was, originated as this opportunity for sharing of knowledge, for exchange, for building of relationships, and it continues to be that. And I think, one of the greatest takeaways that our participants tell us is the opportunity to see their colleagues. Sometimes, we're on the other side of the archipelago for years and years, and then we finally get to meet someone who's been an email for how long in person. And then, of course, just to have the opportunity to have a professional conference here in Hawaii, so that we don't have to get on a plane and fly 6 hours to get somewhere to either share our own research or to learn from others. So at the conference, the content ranges from what you might think of as a conventional research science presentation to workshops, where we teach cultural practice that are connected to the work we do in conservation. These are just a few shots from last year. Our keynote, one of our keynotes, Hanauma Thompson. And I do want to note, and I'm going to show you our website later because it's much more dynamic than my PowerPoint skills. But all of our keynote presentations are videotaped and posted online. I really encourage you guys to check out Hanauma Thompson's from last year. It was really inspirational, as well as our other two plenaries that are posted there. They're each about an hour long, but I think some really cool stuff. This year, we are having a conference. We don't have pictures of it yet because it hasn't happened. It's going to happen July 24th through 26th. We are really grateful to be able to offer student scholarships thanks to the Hau'oli Mauloa Foundation. So we really, one of our goals is to get a high level of student participation in the conference because students are our next generation of conservationists. They're going to be the ones doing the work for the next 30 years. It's a really cool opportunity. And I do want to note that it is free to the public Wednesday, July 25th from 1 to 5 p.m. So for those of you who are not quite sure and just maybe want to check it out, I do encourage you to come. It's at the Hawaii Convention Center. And it really is the largest gathering of conservation professionals in Hawaii. And you can meet people who specialize in one rare plant species, and you can meet people who work across landscapes of the whole Pacific. So it's really a good, there's good breadth there and a great opportunity to meet colleagues and also just to learn more about what you do and feel inspired. So that's my plug for that. So this is just a quick snapshot of another project we work on. And this is something that I am going to show you the actual website. It's conservationconnections.org. And this is a website that has a few really cool tools that I will show you, including a directory of conservation organizations and groups throughout the state of Hawaii, where it's over 200 now that are listed there. Real-time opportunities that those sites are offering. So it could be to volunteer, it could be a job. All of those things are posted up there. And as you can see on the bottom here, the organizations and the projects represented on Connections work Malka, Makai, and Maoli in cultural practice. This is a very tiny image of what you might see on there, but I'm going to show you the website later, so we'll just skip right over that. The other tool that I wanted to talk to you folks about today is Conservation Career Compass. Now, this is a tool that it's a sister site to Connections, but it's really targeted to folks who are looking for a career in conservation or are embarking upon that career and are looking for some tools to help them succeed. So you can see around the compass there the different types of content offered. And again, this is since we have live internet connection, thank you very much to Hanauma Bay. I will show you that website as well, because there's a lot of great tools for folks who are looking into the next step of their career. This is our homepage, which I will show you too, mostly because it's a great place to find more resources about all the projects that I'm going to show you or talk more about tonight. And I'm going to exit this and jump to the website. And let me just make that bigger. Oops, no, it doesn't want to do that. I'll do this. So the other project I'm going to talk to you tonight about, and I will show you some stuff on the website here, but another project we did is called the Community Watershed Snapshot. Yeah, go ahead.
That's the first time I saw your website. Do you have connections for everything else that we were talking about here? Like if you wanted to see what was being presented at the conference, can you get it through here?
Yes, it will all be on this website, and I'll walk you through some of those links in a minute. So yeah, the final project I want to talk to you about is Community Watershed Snapshot, and this is a tool where the publicly available data. So there's a large amount of spatial data about the environment that's publicly available, but it might be housed in different agencies because, of course, the Forest Service is going to have the data about forests, and the parks are going to have information about what's going on in their parks. But the Alliance, it was over multiple years, combined and developed a master database of all of these data sets, and then went out and talked to communities about what's important to them, because there's things that might have been important that an agency isn't necessarily measuring or evaluating. And the output is this snapshot. And I'm going to come back to it, so I'm just showing this really briefly, but one of the 3 pilot sites was Honolulu Bay, and that's part of the reason I really wanted to show this tonight, because we are here on the end of Mauna Lua, so it's relevant to this area, and this is some analysis of the work done. Yeah.
So it was Mapuchimakai.
Yeah.
So we chose Kamililulu Valley all the way down towards Honolulu Bay, and then it was also Kuli'o'o, another little piece that we made as an ahupua'a all the way down into Honolulu Bay.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for clarifying. Yeah, and when we come back, I definitely want to delve in a little bit deeper to some of these outputs, but just to kind of briefly introduce. So we call it watershed, but it's not one watershed. In each site, we ask the community to define their place. But the parameter that was true across all is that we are looking ridge to reef. And that kind of comes back to the approach of ecosystem scale restoration, preservation, and conservation. So I'm just going to quickly show you a few things on the website so that for those of you who are interested in these things, you can find it later and get more information. Of course, you can always ask me as well. And I will note here, you'll see on the top, there's the Alliance and the Foundation. The Hawaii Conservation Alliance Foundation was created in 2006 with the intention of supporting important work identified by the Alliance. So because the Alliance is a partnership, it doesn't have capacity to raise money and conduct projects and that kind of stuff. So the foundation helps us do that. So that's our venue. So even though they're administratively different and have distinct roles, they work hand in hand. So the foundation hears from the Alliance what the needs are, what the priorities are, and finds ways to address them. So I want to jump to the conference really fast. So on the website, you'll see along the top, here's the links to the conference. If you want information about the current conference, if you want to sign up and register to attend, if you want to see what kind of opportunities and to look at the program and the speakers, that's all available online. Our full program won't be posted until next week because we're still finalizing our order of presentations, but you can find it there. Under past conferences, you can also find links to those videos that I mentioned. So of the keynote presentations from previous years. So that's that link there. There's also under our work, you can learn about some of the key projects we work on. I don't want to bog down the computer, so I'm going to go through these tabs in a minute, but I promise all of them are live and they work. So as you can see on the top, I mentioned Conservation Connections and Conservation Career Compass, which I will revisit. And also here you can look at conservation maps, which I'll show you in a minute, as well as some of the community watershed snapshot outputs. So I'm going to jump now to connections. Now that I finished that overview. So this is Conservation Connections. As I mentioned, there's a couple really key functions of the site. And one is that it is a directory, basically. And so there's over 200 sites. They're called sites, but it includes both organizations and agencies, as well as a specific site where an organization or an agency is doing work. So for example, the Campbell National Wildlife Refuge is a site where there's specific work going on. The Fish and Wildlife Service is an organization. You can find both of them on here. So this is just a place that you can check out. If you're interested, you can sort it by what type of work each of the sites or organizations does. And you can also, if I can scroll down here, oops, sorry, really fast. Let me go use that. You can also, if you go, you can search by island. And there's also a map here, which sometimes is a little slow to load. But let's say you live in East Oahu and you want to learn more about what's going on in your area. You can zoom right in on this map and find all kinds of different groups and sites of projects going on in that area. So it's a good resource if you're trying to figure out what's going on in your community, if you're just trying to better understand the scope of what type of work is going on in conservation. And it's also free to use. So if you have a project, if you have an activity, and let's say you're looking to recruit volunteers or you're looking to raise awareness, but you don't maybe have the capacity to develop a whole website and do all of that, any site can create a profile. So it's kind of, the concept came about before some of our more recent social media tools came out. So it's a little bit of a low-tech conservation Facebook, but the idea here is really just providing this resource of information for folks to share. And so, as I mentioned, there's over 200 sites currently listed on here, including Hanauma Bay. And there's all kinds of different filter tools that you can get to. The other really key thing that I think this site has that to me is one of the really useful functions is opportunities. So this is a real-time set of opportunities to work, volunteer, attend an outreach event, or get an internship. And so we ask all of the sites to post all of these opportunities. And, let's say you're looking for a job in conservation. So all of these here are real existing jobs that are open, some of them right now, closing pretty soon here within a week. And you can access, so this is something that you can check on a regular basis. Also, if you have a particular interest in one organization, let's say you really love volunteering in fish ponds, you can create a profile and you can follow certain sites. And so then when that site posts a new opportunity, if it's a community work day or a presentation like this, you'll get emailed, but only for those sites. So we know it's really hard. You don't want to be getting a million emails a day about a million different things. And so the site is designed so that you can choose what you're interested in and follow those different organizations and hear more about what they're doing. From there, I want to jump over to Conservation Career Compass because it is a sister site. It's built off the same database in the background as Connections for a lot of the opportunities, but it does have a little bit more. So this is really specific for folks that are interested in a career in conservation. It might be you, it might be someone in your family, but this is something that actually the idea came a little bit out of the Promise to Pai'aina initiative, which was inspired by the Malama Honua Worldwide Voyage. And the group that worked on that Promise to Pai'aina futures group, so looking at the future of conservation and of our communities and of our islands, thought that it was really important for people who are either just starting their secondary education or about to finish it and looking for the next step, have a resource where they can find all of these different things, because it can get really tedious when you're checking rcuh.com and then you're on USA Jobs and then you're just looking at some other site and then it's literally sometimes just a paper bulletin board posting somewhere in some hallway. And so the idea here is we're trying to kind of lump all of that information together. And so if you scroll down here, on the left, you can, oops, sorry, I'm not very good with the scroller. You can look at all of these different, so these are just samples you see on the left here, but you can jump to internships and fellowships. And these are all, within the conservation, natural sciences, social science, and including community work, things that are included. So lots of great opportunities here that you can see. Again, you can jump to jobs if that's the stage you're at and you're looking for a job. Again, you can see that there's kind of real open jobs right now. And then another thing that I wanted to highlight on here, before I jump there, there's also career guidance blogs that has everything from how to write a CV to how to prepare for an interview. And these are all written by people who are currently active conservation professionals. One thing on here that I want to highlight. So these are, I'm not going to show them right now, but these are all short 2 to 3 minute video clips. And these are all established conservation professionals talking about their own career pathway as well as what they do. Because the field of conservation is not just swimming a transect and counting the fish, although that is very important. But there's a lot of other things around that. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. There's outreach. So there's people on here who started their education in graphic design, but then became an outreach specialist working in conservation. There's people, there's Miguel, he flies a plane and collects spatial data from a plane, pretty cool. So that if you're interested at all in a career, but if you're not really sure, I can say I started off as a marine biology major and realized that I actually don't really love statistics and I'm not that interested in that kind of quantitative data. I'm really excited about the qualitative stuff. And I found a niche for myself kind of by accident in that I like working with people who do conservation and who find better ways to take care of our place. I mean, I love being outside, but I'm much more qualitative, and there's still an opportunity for me in conservation. And so that's one of the things we really want to highlight here, that it takes all kinds of expertise, all kinds of passion, and we need everybody to have a chance because our challenges are great. And so the opportunities are equally great. So if you're interested in those, please check them out. Some really awesome people there. So those are those 2 tools. So the next thing I want to jump to, I'm not going to talk too much more about the conference because I just encourage you to look at it if you're interested. Let me know if you have any questions, and yeah.
Yeah, a lot of connections, a lot of people. Do you solicit all that stuff, or you wait for people to send you?
So both. The site is set up for people to be able to input things themselves for the connection site. So the design is that they can create their own profile and upload their own information. But the model of if you build it, they will come, I have not found to ever be true. I have found you have to call them up and tell them to come. And so we are very, very fortunate this year. We have an intern from Kupu who's been able to work on this. And so, yep, she's calling people up and saying, hey, what are you guys up to? You got something going on? Make sure you get it online so people can find out about it. Yeah. So if you are someone who works for an organization or a site and you do have volunteer days or you do recruit for jobs, I encourage you to post here because the benefit is, well, first of all, it's free. So it's free advertising. And we do have, Kristen does actually go to events and we help let people know about this. So it's an extra opportunity for you to have someone else go and help spread the word for you. So the next thing I want to jump to is the watershed snapshot. And I'm very grateful to have someone in the room who did participate in actually doing this. And I'm going to jump back a little bit because as I mentioned, there were several years of work that went into this and a lot of different folks. And so I think going back almost 10 years now, folks started building that geospatial database that I mentioned. So that's, it's in ESRI Esri ARC, but basically pulling all of these different massive databases together. So then what? So now we can say, we can run a model, run some analyses and say what the health of an area is, the overall status. What's the native forest cover? What's the degradation in the watershed? But so what? What are we going to do about it? And so the next step was to actually work with the people on the ground in those places. And that was how the community watershed snapshot evolved. And so what that entailed was, first of all, we have a GIS specialist, and she helped crunch all of that spatial data to make it mean something. But then the really important thing is also asking people on the ground, what's going on in your place? What do you see? What are you concerned about? And I came on after this project, so I'm very fortunate to be able to be a part of it now. But another thing that the team really worked on is talking to the kupuna in an area, because sometimes there's really key critical data that's just locked in someone's brain because there wasn't a temperature logger, there wasn't a rain gauge, but somebody remembers what was happening and how a place has changed over time. So that was one of the things that was captured. Another thing that's an important kind of qualitative element was place names. It's pretty daunting when you start downloading some of the maps of Hawaii, how different just the naming of the places is. And a lot of times what might be on some, government database somewhere doesn't match with how the people in that place know their place and through dozens of generations and how they've known that place. So it was really important to the Alliance to make sure that people were involved in this because they have knowledge that isn't captured in these quantitative databases. For example, one of the important things that is in a database that came out is the number of cesspools within 200 feet of a waterway. That has a direct measurable impact, but it's really hard to kind of go lot by lot to figure out what's going on. And so this is a proxy for saying, how are we as a place dealing with our wastewater issues? One of the other parameters that came up for some of the sites is impermeable surfaces. The more impermeable surface you have, the more runoff you have in a rain event, the more pollution you have going into your nearshore environment. Also, if it's an impermeable surface, you can assume that there's not a lot of native vegetation there because it's cement or asphalt. So also a proxy gauge for the health of the watershed. So you can see here, so this is just one of the products. So there's a lot more than this, and I will show you. Let me pull up this map here. So there's multiple products that came out of this project. This is the poster. So this is kind of capturing and summarizing some of the key characteristics of this watershed that were important to the people who worked on this project. And I do want to acknowledge for this area here in Mauna that oh, this is the wrong one. That's why it didn't look right. The Livable Hawaii Kaihui, the Maunalua Fish Pond Heritage Center, and Malama Maunalua were all major contributors to this area, to the snapshot for this area. So this is looking a lot better and more accurate. This other one I showed you that I just had up was for Hau'ula, which is still very interesting if you live on this island. And the third pilot site was Hanauma, Hawaii. So all very different sites. So one thing that you'll note that isn't on here is we're not grading or categorizing or comparing because each site is going to be different. There's places where your natural state is to have a whole lot of sandy bottom in the ocean. And there's some places where your natural state is to have a lot of coral cover. So we don't want to say that one place is necessarily unhealthy because there's sand, because maybe healthy means sand. So it was really important that we just let the data speak for itself and let the place speak for itself. So here you can see that output, and I'll put that up front here. But I do want to show you, because I think for me, the online maps are one of the cool products, because this allows you to really go in and zoom in on a place. So here I'll zoom out a little bit so you can see. So right, we're somewhere in there. And so some of the things you'll see here, so there might be a spot, you just click on it, and here's a piece of data that came from one of the organizations that participated. And you can see, it's a fish biomass measure. So that's one data spot that then goes into these broader analyses. But if you go into the map, you can really look at things at a much more detailed level. So it's pretty user friendly. It's literally just click and point and click. And you can see here too, if I scroll down, for Mauna Lua, I think it's really cool that the group was able to find some aerial imagery going back all the way to 1927. If I do too much of this, I might bog down the computer. So I don't want to do too much toggling here, but it's definitely, I think, a cool tool. So you just click and unclick and you can turn it off, and then you can click that. So you can see here, let's look at New Valley, where you have the school and the shopping center. And then you can click over what it looked like in 1927. And it looks like there's lo'i. That's what I would say, maybe, and agricultural areas. So this is just going to help people understand their place a little bit better. It's a visual tool. And you can also kind of go in and explore and say, okay, well, how's the fish biomass in this area doing? And you can actually see that it's not fully raw data, but where things are coming from, where these assessments and these analyses come from. and just understand more about your place. So here, like I said, cesspools were something that was identified as important. You can turn on this, and they're hard to see in all this, but you can see these little red dots are popping up. And so that's where you can see where there's potentially impacts to water quality happening in this area. So if you want to find this, I pulled this up earlier because we are where we are. But if you go to our website, go to our work, conservation maps, scroll down, oops, not that fast. And you click view maps, and it opens this page here. And so in this page, you can jump directly to Mauna Loa. You can also look at Ha'ena and Hau'ula and Honolulu. So there might not be exactly the same data sets from place to place. That's another reason it's apples and oranges if you're just going to compare different areas, because sometimes you don't necessarily have the same data. But whatever data we could find is on there and viewable. The other thing that you can view here is this general watershed health maps. So if you click on that, it takes you to this tool, and I'll zoom out a little bit here. So some of you may have heard the term story map before, and this is a similar kind of approach, but basically it's just another tool to visualize what's going on in a place. What are both from the ecological assessment as well as management. So I picked this area because this is where I grew up. So it's a place that I'm definitely very passionate about and care about a lot. And so here you can see these blue and yellow zones on the coastline there have to do with special management areas. So this map also, if they're spatial, not everything can be represented spatially. So they are maps, but this one also is a tool to show what kind of work is being done here to help protect this place, to help manage the place. And so it's another cool tool. It covers all the inhabited islands. So if I'm zooming out here, give it a minute. You can see there's a lot going on in some of these places. But again, you can use the legend here, and you can turn layers on and off so that you're not visualizing everything at once. Also, so some of these, we've included some traditional boundaries, area boundaries. Again, just because that when we spoke to the communities and the organizations who are doing the work on the ground, that was something that was important to people. And so why do we do this? This is an example of collaboration. This took data from a dozen different agencies. It took meetings and on the ground with communities to pull all of this together. So these are the kind of things that we can't do individually, but we have to do as in a partnership and collaboratively together. The same, I think, with Connections and Compass, where those are tools that we want to be available for the whole conservation community, because if we grow and we succeed as a community, then we all succeed. And so that's something that we strive to provide and support the community with. So if you go to, this is back to our homepage, and if you go under our work to Community Watershed Snapshots here, and you scroll down, you can actually download the full-size poster as well as an 8.5 by 11 fact sheet. So if you're particularly interested in this area, I encourage you to grab it. It's very accessible. It's designed to be short and sweet, but it does a good job of kind of capturing what's going on here. And one of the things that I want to point out on this fact sheet for Mauna Loa, and I know it's kind of small, but there's 53 projects going on just in this area. And so I think, there's bright spots. There's challenges for sure. When you look at, some of the water quality issues, it can feel daunting. But one of the things that we also want to point out, almost 13,000 volunteers, that's the success. And that's an important metric in understanding a place and in working in that place. And I do want to take a minute to invite, if you want to add anything specifically about either the process or anything that you want to highlight about something that you found interesting that you learned about your place through the project.
Before I point out something that's on the center flyer there, I wanted to mention you had said collaboration and partnership, but what I want all of you to know is the empowering factor of working with them. So when they came forth, and I was one of the ones who worked for 3 years with them on this snapshot, it was an amazing, empowering experience. We always walked away learning something more, whether it was from another organization that was present or from the alliance themselves, the foundation themselves. And what ended up happening was those of us that participated in the watershed snapshot had such a great experience. And when we looked at the outcomes, said, now what? What do we do with all of this? Yeah, we're going to share it with everybody, but what now do you do? So some of us took a pledge and we said, we've got to maintain this energy. And we used it to catapult a movement called Honolulu Watershed Hui, which it took a year and a half, almost 2, to get us organized. And that would not have happened if it wasn't for this experience with them. And so now the Honolulu Watershed Hui will be working with those same organizations and others that are interested in taking a look at some of the outputs and then actually coming up with some tangible projects to keep that effort moving. And it's all going to be based upon water, obviously, and water quality, time. So I want to thank you publicly. And if you have a chance, if you guys are here on a Theater Thursday, the conference is totally your kind of thing. So whether you go on a free day or you pay to attend, I've gone, and other great empowering opportunity. I am not schooled in the area of conservation, but I have been doing it for 10 years, just out of interest and an enthusiast with it. So I just want to say thank you very much. The thing that jumped out at me, 2 things on this one flyer here, was across the board with the working group, the desire to make sure that we brought forth the culture and the proper place names. And I think that speaks to being rooted within the culture, the host culture that knows how to really care for the land. And then the second, for me, because of the area that I work in, was the 7% native forest cover. I was so shocked to see that in the areas that we were looking at, only 7% was native cover. So some of the work that I do literally takes out invasive species and plants back natives. And so my goal one day would be to go back and recalculate in years to come and make sure that that's changed from 7 to 15. Wouldn't that be great? So I wanted to take time to just share that with all of you, and thank you again.
Well, and I mean, thank you, because without a community, we're just a pile of data, and what does that do other than require us to buy more hard drives to store all that data? And I think, I do invite you guys to take a look at this, because there's even some quotes from Kapuna here. And I think it's really inspiring to remember why we do this, because we're not doing this so that we can get rid of all the people and it'll be perfect and beautiful and no one will ever see it. We're doing it for the future of our community, because we want to be healthy, because we want to be vibrant, and we feel that a healthy environment is a key part of that.
And I have to say this too, and I'm real excited. When we started the process with you guys 3-4 years ago, since then, when the group came together and started forming a more group to take us into the future, we also reached out and started working with the water supply. Mm-hmm. And for those who don't know, the water supply is done watershed master planning throughout the island, with the exception of this area. They are now coming to this area. Mm-hmm. And we are well poised between the watershed snapshot process and the Honolulu watershed Hui that's formed to embrace them, welcome them into the community, and probably do some really cool work. So again, thank you for helping prep us for that opportunity.
Awesome. And one last point I want to note too is that I think sometimes absence of data is data. And I think one of the things that came out in this area was how little Department of Health monitoring was happening within the Bay. And so again, that was something that, the community said, we really want to know how's our water quality. And we came back and said, we don't know, because nobody's measuring it. And the community is now doing something about it.
That's a priority. And citizen science will be part of it. But working with folks through the Honolulu Watershed Hui, that's going to take it to that level and standard that the Board of Health will recognize it by literally establishing a co-op that they did it on Maui, and it's going gangbusters and great. Mm-hmm. Now we can take that model and bring it here. All of this is happening through the watershed snapshot that we got to do with you guys. So, yeah, absolutely right.
What you said before is really important. Do you have a plan that goes out to legislators and people in different departments It seems the things that hold all of us back are the people, our elected officials and the people they appoint. And so any educational program to get them to let them know.
So the Alliance itself has government members, so we don't engage in any kind of lobbying. That being said, these kind of informational flyers are put out to decision makers, but this is an area where we don't advocate for any specific regulatory or legislative action. The community can certainly take these products and do so, but we didn't. It's for this project, we didn't feel like it was our role to then turn around and tell people what to do. We just wanted to share that information and have the community itself determine what the next best steps are. So in some case, that may be legislative advocacy. In some cases, it's developing a quality assurance plan, something other P for water quality monitoring. So we don't at the moment. The foundation does engage somewhat with decision makers on an informational basis, an educational basis.
Education is two ways: shove it down their throat or brochures. You do both. That doesn't mean advocacy.
Right.
It means
education. We definitely do our best to get it out. Brian, I think, can help answer that.
We supply them with a wealth of actual knowledge regarding the resources and good data.
And I do, just to wrap this up, we are excited this year. We actually have a guidebook coming out for the Watershed Snapshot. So we were very fortunate that Mauna Loa, Hau'ula Punaluu, and Ha'ena helped us pilot this. So they spent over many meetings and many years helping us as the Alliance figure out how we should do this. So now that we figured that out, the team has put together a guidebook. I will be upfront that in order to do a GIS analysis, you do need a GIS specialist. This is not kind of an off-the-shelf, anyone could grab this and get that output without some of that kind of technical background. But the idea is that this guidebook lays out some clear steps and what the capacity needs are and in order to achieve this. And for communities that embark upon it, we have the database available for a GIS specialist to use that data and conduct the analyses. That's the kind of behind the scenes stuff that puts out some of the maps that I was showing you earlier. But the maps, of course, are always available for browsing if you just want to see what's going on in your area. And I think with that, I've gone over my time a little bit. Sorry. So now.
You can ask some questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyone else have any questions?
When does the talk start?
No,
Real quick. So
Yeah.
you guys have been around for 30 years.
Yeah.
Being naive to your existence until now. What are some of your biggest successes over the past 30 years, and how can those kind of be applied to other similar organizations in the States on areas?
Well, I think, and I will invite Brian to help answer because I haven't necessarily been involved for 30 years, but I think from speaking to people, one of the first achievements, which I think, maybe sometimes I'm guilty of even taking for granted now, is just this open communication between people that, we make a point if we get together 4 times a year and we talk to each other, and we have projects that we're working on, but just that interaction keeps those communication lines open. And that's not always the case in every area. And actually, in speaking to some folks who've been visiting here, they're like, nah, that doesn't work that way everywhere. So I think, it sounds really simple, but I think that is actually a huge success. I think that the conference is something that, we're really happy to have so much participation in because it is, I grew up here, and it's hard when you're trying to get that experience under your belt of a professional conference, but you got to come up with the money to fly to the mainland and put yourself up at a hotel and do all this kind of stuff. And so having that opportunity here at home is really great. And I think also because it fosters more work here and more kind of relationships and sharing of knowledge about a place. And You know, I remember going to, you know, one of the first talks about, you know, and I was coming kind of out of college, and all right, we got to have bag and size limits, and that's how we'll save the fish. And totally different talk about nothing even remotely marine, but about the importance of engaging the local community. And I was like, oh wait, that's actually like, seems like a no-brainer, but it's not necessarily something that that I learned about in school. So I think those are some of the ones that come to mind. But I saw Brian had his hand up, so I'd love to let him.
In my mind that I think are unique to Hawaii and result from your outfit is say in the 70s, different agencies on Maui that all were trying to take care of the native birds and fighting each other or competing with each other. And we grouped them together to form the West Maui Watershed Partnership. Yeah, all the agencies work together, iron out common strategies, share resources, and that became the model for all of the islands. We have watershed partnerships where all of the agencies are combining their people, their energies, their money to a common goal. And it saves the taxpayers a bundle of money. It sure saves the ecosystems. Another one that comes to mind is that I believe that before the Secretariat and before the Alliance formed, the University of Hawaii, both the Manoa and Hilo campuses, were noted for their taxonomy. They have evolved now to be world famous for their management of island native systems. And that evolved out of this collaborative effort. Those are unique in the world, I believe.
So yeah, I think coming from, you know, my previous job was Division of Aquatic Resources, and I think that relationship between management and researchers is so key, because the managers don't have time to conduct research. The researchers want a project that's relevant, but having that those lines of communication, again, it sounds so simple, but I think that it's very meaningful for us within our group.
In that regard, one of the things that were done in the 80s was they had about every other year what we call a forum, and by invite only, you had about 15 of the top scientists who were working on native ecosystems, and about 15 of the managers who were managing them. And they met separately for the first couple of days, and the managers sat around and said, what do we need to know that these scurvy researchers aren't finding out for us? And the researchers were meeting separately. What have we learned that the managers are just throwing their nose at us? And then we would get together the last 2 days and try to bring those together. And in fact, from some of the forums, we succeeded and evolved out of that the management watershed partnerships and the ISCs, the invasive species groups that tackle invasive alien species.